Well, hello everybody. Larry Young here again with another segment of OlaMan Living Life with Purity. And as you can see, we've got Alex Fiato is back in the studio again today. And I asked Alex to come back in because he'd picked up on some very interesting follow-up information that we had to give you from a previous episode that we did that I think you need to go back and watch again. Was the episode where we talked about the Colombian nun who had the apparitions of Benedict XVI, and to where he came to this nun and told her, and gave his last will and testament to her, into the background of some of the things that happened, the machinations that went on with him being told to step down at the Vatican, and with bringing in his successor, that being Francis Bergoglio, otherwise known as Pope Francis. So anyway, there's some more information that came to light, this through Archbishop Vigano, who's also been shut down lately here by Pope Francis. He hasn't been defrocked, but he has been have his duties taken away from him. And I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to discredit him very, very much. But a lot of you, if you don't know Archbishop Vigano, he had been, the prelate, or what do they call that to the United States?
He was close confidant to Pope Benedict, and he was Secretary of State and also the Ambassador of the United States.
Right, they made him Ambassador to the U.S., and the reason that Benedict XVI made him the Ambassador, and I had a little bit of background on that, was that Benedict XVI was concerned about the state of the Catholic Church all over the world. And declining situation. This is why they had a lot of the big push on getting China and getting the numbers up, because the numbers were down. They thought China was very ripe for evangelization there and mission work. But Benedict XVI was concerned about the state of the world, and he knew that the world followed the lead of the United States. And so he wanted Vigano, one of his best guys, to be on the mission with the United States to try to basically reinforce the Catholic Church in the United States so that it would be strong, so it could lead the world. And this goes very much in hand with Our Lady's call in 1956 as Our Lady of America for the children of the United States to lead the world by the purity of their lives. So whether there was a cross-contaminant in that thinking, I don't know.
No, actually.
But Our Lady has a way of infecting you.
No, absolutely. It's what you said, that if it's important to Our Lady, it should be important to us. And you were talking about Fatima. They were asked to
correct themselves, the priests and the bishops.
And did they?
Well, no, this is the fifth secret that we talked about. And so the fifth secret was to be held until 1960.
Correct.
So Our Lady is wise in these things. She knew that it was going to take roughly 2 generations for the culture in the Catholic Church, and especially among its priests and bishops, to develop a culture to where they would voluntarily stand in the light and be held accountable for the things that they've done and not done.
So Pope John the 23rd would not read that. In 1960, he refused to read the third secret of Fatima and said it's not for us to give to the public. It's not about us to give to the public at this time. But Our Lady wanted him to read it. Right,
and she had directed it as part of the message to the children in 1917 to hold it until 1960.
So let me ask you this, Larry. What have you gathered over the course of your study of what that third secret and
was it the third secret or fifth secret? I don't know.
It was the third secret of Fatima.
Was it the third secret? Okay, well, I knew it was a curly number, and there's somewhere a crooked number.
The fifth dogma is the other thing that we're going to talk about. That was
the fifth dogma. Right. Okay, third secret. Well, anyway, this secret was originally designed that she wanted them to have time to self-correct and to take measures to think about how they were going about their work as priests and bishops. And she knew that they were not holding themselves accountable and they weren't self-correcting. And so she was going to give them time, I think, by giving them to 1960 to self-correct, take these actions, because you can't do it overnight. These are cultural things that are going to take, training, formation, and then become solidified and become part of the culture of being a priest and being a bishop, what's expected and how to go about these things. But what we found out is that they didn't do it. And then in 1960, the church, in its wisdom, I guess, if you will, or lack of bravery, did not release it. And even though Our Lady also had asked about this again in 1956 with Our Lady of America, she was concerned about the materialism of her priests and bishops, and she wanted that to be changed. But she was still waiting for 1960, so she was patient, still is patient. But so 1960 comes, they don't release it. So what does Our Lady do? She says, okay, I told you. So she comes in 1963 then to Garabandal.
That's right.
And then at Garabandal, she basically says everything that was in there because they didn't release it. So she's going to say it.
That's right.
Okay. And this is kind of like how when your mother or whatever is tired of you, whether it's picking your nose or doing some other bad habit in public, eventually she gets tired of trying to dismiss it, and eventually she calls you out for it in front of everybody to sort of embarrass you into not doing it anymore. But she tried everything else.
Yes.
So, just one of those funny things that all moms have this in them.
And it was at Garabandal that she begins to unravel the severity of the falling away, meaning the apostasy. Now, we do not believe Christ is in the Eucharist. Any religion, you have access to God. It's all the same thing. On and on, which is what apostasy is, a distortion and a degrading of the truth. And
we got our Pope now is saying that all these religions are a path to God. Buddhism, Hinduism, all these other things, possibly even relativism, he might say. It's like, as long as you got God in mind. But they're leaving Jesus out, and as Catholics, the path to God is through Jesus. And a lot of our Protestant brothers and sisters believe this too. But why would the Pope, just the other day, sit there and say that all these paths are paths to God, when he's basically teaching against his own brand, which is a winning brand? What's up with that?
Well, this comes down to the from heaven. Pope Benedict was given the opportunity to dissertate on his last will and testament, and Pope Benedict basically said that it was a coup d'état, that Pope Francis is not a legitimate pope. It was a takeover. He was threatened, and he had to step down. Now, this is very shocking news from heaven, and this is why this updated information.
Well, this is why I wanted you to get back in here. I say we got to get in here now, because this is really urgent stuff. So now this goes back to what I led in here. So Alex has found more information on that corroborates this story and the narrative that was in these apparitions from this nun in Colombia.
Yeah.
And a lot of people say, well, batshit crazy nun down in Colombia saying all this stuff. But she has no monetization on this. There's no dollar chase. There's no seeking interviews or publications.
Nothing.
She is very, very clean.
Yeah.
I think in this thing from what we've been able to see so far. There is definitely no indication of impropriety that we've been able to see.
Yeah.
So, but this last few weeks we've been getting more information
current events
through
are saying
Archbishop
that,
Vigano.
That's right. Current events are saying that it's bad, and
it's really bad.
Yeah.
So
there's a couple things. I'm going to read a couple paragraphs to give you an idea of what Pope Francis said to Pope Benedict. And the other thing is one of the key features of what was said. These are shocking things that are said to Pope Benedict. However, the key and the thrust of this last will and testament is co-redemptrix mediatrix of all graces of the Blessed Mother, because that's the fifth dogma.
But it's a big issue with Our Lady of America, too.
Betcha.
So
that opens the door for Our Lady to bring peace into the world. In order to bring peace into the world, the chaos has got to be sifted and done away with. So God is going to have to take the darkness and expunge it. Let me read this, Larry. I know you don't particularly like, but this says it well. Pope Benedict says, on the occasion of our 95th birthday, Francis, Pope Francis or
Pope.
He calls him Francis or Bergoglio. He says, Francis came to visit me, brought a bottle of wine and caramel paste, and asked if he could be alone with me. And I never thought his cynicism and capacity for evil were so outspoken. Again, I saw his hatred of me. of the church, and above all, of the boundless hatred of the Mother of God. What? I had always considered myself a peaceful diplomatic person. What could I do? Only suffering in silence and in great solitude, for at the end of my life I found myself in perfect agreement with the suffering of Christ, who had been so abandoned by all of divine help. This part of my catharsis, I understood my office of Christ Vicar required a great purification. Much had been entrusted to me, and I would have to answer to God for all of my administration. I had to answer not only for my soul as a baptized Christian, but for the whole church. What a great responsibility, what a heavy cross I had to bear. From that moment on, everything was clear to me, and the realization made me doubly uncomfortable. You want to comment on that, Larry, or you want me to go?
Well, the guy saw the signs. He said, this is very uncomfortable. This is not a man worthy of being the Pope of the church that he was defending and building along with his ally there, John Paul II.
That's right.
You know, I mean, they called him, the Pope's Rottweiler, Ratzinger, but he was really an affable guy. But his look, kind of gave a cold, austere feeling to a lot of people. But he had a really good sense of humor down at the bottom, and a great love for people and for his church. But he knew that the church without discipline and without boundaries was useless and was not going to be effective going forward. And this is one of the reasons that he tried having Archbishop Vigano to be the relationship builder with the United States, and to go in a relationship with the United States and say, look, guys, we got to raise the game.
Okay, so now how important is the United States in recollecting what Joseph Torellia told you about the brick Trump?
Oh,
from the this is real interesting.
The Hermit of Loretto.
Yeah.
Well, when Joseph came, and a lot of folks may not, you should look up Joseph Torellia, Josep, no H on the end.
Right.
Terelya.
Yes.
Look him up. But Joseph was a mystic.
He was a mystic and a political activist in Russia, and spent 26 years in gulags because of his wanting to pray to Christ.
And he was kind of a church activist afterward, because he realized and he knew, and I was feeling, that time was running out. If in my situation with Rome City, if Our Lady or heaven or anyone in general is looking for me to come in and try to help something,
we're in trouble.
They're in big trouble. They're in really big trouble.
Larry's going, that ain't me. Obviously you picked the wrong guy here.
Well, it's like I've said from day one, I'm not a churchy guy. And we just had a discussion upstairs that'll come out in the next podcast. But, there's a lot of stuff I don't know, but I know what the facts is, and I know what the truth is. And I think I kind of scare a few people in power today because, of what I do know. And I know that a lot of them are kind of waiting for me to get out of the picture and just be dead.
Probably true.
Well, it is true.
Right.
I get remarks from people, these wonderful church ladies and all like that.
And by the way, we really don't care if we become dead.
What?
I'm not afraid of death. Are you?
Oh, hell no. No, I mean, death is actually going to be.
You want to hand us a ticket?
We're
good to go.
Yeah, I'm not afraid of death. Never have been since I saw heaven's light. I'm ready. I mean, take me now, because I know there's a whole lot better situation on the other side. But that being said, I got a lot to do, and you've got a lot to do.
Well, we're going to try our best here to impart with you our experiences and our thoughts and our opinions as best we can. But ultimately, you're going to have to do your own homework. You're going to have to look up Joseph Torellia, get his book. He's done several books. You have to do your own homework.
Witness was the big one.
Witness is the big one.
Was that written by Michael Brown?
He helped write it. He was one of the ones that helped write it. The other two books that he did, the Kingdom of the Spirit, which is excellent, Brown didn't help him. And then there's another book that he wrote, Body and Blood, and Brown didn't help him write that. Joseph was planning on writing Witness too, and I discussed it with an intimate of his, and I said, was that ever done, or where's the manuscript? And they told me, well, they don't know where it is, and he never did complete witness to his children in particular, which is not unusual because the father went through an awful lot, and the kids a lot of times don't want to carry on.
No, they saw what Dad went through, and they said, I don't want any of that crap.
Right.
It's too painful. They don't leave you alone. I mean,
right.
I've had people found out where I live now, and they're trying to harass me here too. From some of these things. And I'm saying, look, if you don't like the truth, change the channel.
That's right. You don't have to listen to it. Right. It's
right. But I'm telling you what it is and what I've seen here, what is going on. But as regarding Joseph, what he was telling me, he said, you're in it. You are in it. It's one of the biggest things that the world has ever seen here with Our Lady of America, this turning point of how this inflection point is for the world right now.
Yeah.
And it is key that the United States not lose its strength and its regard for the devotions and the church and its practices, and not to be so slippery, but to be definite. Have definite boundaries and goalposts and enforce these regions. And this is one of the things that I say, that the declining mass attendance and the declining.
Is it really that bad, Larry? You said
there's places around the country that you may, in an active parish, get 40 people come to a Sunday Mass.
You have some contact with priests. Are they telling you the same thing that
just look if they're online and they got like a streaming of their masses, they're raising the camera so it doesn't show the gallery.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So because there's hardly anybody there.
Okay.
And they're changing the microphone so they don't have the ambient from the people in the room because there's not that many people there. And this is really getting to be, it's not everywhere, but it's enough that it's changing the dynamic. And the big problem is I went to Mass at a different church out here for the last several times over the last couple of months. And I'm one of the youngest guys in there.
So they're not getting the young people.
They're not getting the younger families. And they don't have them in their parishes or whatever. They're keeping these places open, which I find great. But at what cost is going on? When the money runs out, the doors close. It's just how it is, and they have to drive a few miles further to get another Mass. And I think that's okay because we've got a lot of problems with the quality of some of our priests. They're being put in. They're leading people down paths of comfort and out of discipline and the truth.
Well, you're telling me you had the Pope just proclaim that any religion is as good as any religion.
Well, he said all these religions are paths to God.
So our Lord never put together a set of rules or a clear...
Apparently not, because this Pope doesn't seem to...
acknowledge that.
Yeah, he didn't get that in his bathroom reading or something. He's not up to date on it, but he's the Pope, but it goes against everything I was ever taught.
Well, let me get your comment on this. Let me read another, because it's good for food for thought. Under the seal of confession, Pope Benedict is saying, and then his usual flattering attitude of false brotherhood. Now, he says, Bergoglio, or rather Francis, told me in a mocking tone and in a very cynical and ruthless way that he'd like to have the church in his hands, that he would completely destroy her and bury the Eucharist forever. He said, I will wipe out your God off the face of the earth. I have many allies to help me, not only from within, but from without of the church. The cura kneels at my feet, and the College of Cardinals that are faithful dogs. As you know, you can't deny that. They're faithful, and they obey. And he smiled mischievously at Pope Benedict. I brought them here for you, and in case you don't know, I'll confirm it for you. Consider it a favor on my part, and I am not as bad as they say. He smiled again, and this time in a very icy way. What's your thoughts on that, Larry?
Oh, I'm thinking of the story you told about the German fellow who said, when the devil has his arm around you, you don't realize it's the devil.
Yeah.
It's exactly
that was our cousin, Albert Speer. He's a cousin to our family. He was the second in command.
So you are the problem.
I'm part of the problem. I mean, this
is what I was feeling like. He's basically saying I'm not as bad as they may say.
Yeah,
I'm worse.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Albert Speer, through my wife's side of the family, had a second cousin.
Yeah, blame
Speer.
it on her.
and we married into that family, and Albert was a second cousin, Albert was a second cousin to our uncle Speer, and he was second in control of the Third Reich, partially because he was Hitler's architect. Hitler focused on rebuilding Germany, and the capital was under Albert Speer's architectural abilities.
Building and symbolism was a big part of this.
Berlin was going to be the capital of the world.
This huge nationalism movement.
Yeah, you got to remember, very quickly, Hitler, in a matter of weeks, took over Western Europe, basically beat England, and then went after Russia. But Russia didn't respond to the same blitzkrieg because there's thousands of miles before you get to Stalingrad. But so they came this close, folks, to winning the war. And I've been reading about it. At any rate, that's the face of evil. You're right. Albert Speer said to his son, when the devil's got his arm around you,
you don't realize it.
You don't realize it. How would you realize
it?
Because
they pose themselves as friends, and I'm all about you. We're going to get through this together.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They didn't say where we're going to get to.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, but this is how it works.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to get into that more, but we're going to do some stuff on the Antichrist. And at any rate, we got a bunch for you. But Larry, this is, if this is true, this is so disturbing. And first of all, you ever take a look at Pope Francis? Does he look like anybody that's going to take down God?
Not under the rules I figured that there are. That God always wins.
He creates that another way. I just saw the stars when they clear it, and you can see all the stars without any kind of through microscope. It's just an enormous amount of stars, and the bones of Christ in his hands and his humanity and the Holy Trinity created that. I mean, you're going to take this guy out?
No.
Francis?
This is the hubris that goes with the position and the power and this one world order, this globalism that he's after. I mean, the man wants to have no borders.